Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Let's see. Let me just. All right. So, a little bit about myself. I've been in the customs, trade, and tariff world for about 20 years. I started off my career at Ernst& Young, working in New York City in their customs and global trade practice. That is where I obtained my customs license broker, or sorry, I obtained my customs license. So I'm a licensed customs broker, which you might be wondering what that is. So it's kind of the equivalent. You can think about it as like a CPA for your taxes. Most of us go to a CPA to help file our taxes, and they will work with us and advise us and then file our taxes on our behalf with the IRS. So a licensed customs broker acts in a similar way in that we file the customs declarations on behalf of companies and importers in the United States with a different government agency, that's Customs and Border Protection, CBP. Probably hearing about them a lot in the news. So while I do have this credential, I don't act in that capacity for my daily work. I am a consultant and I advise clients and companies on all things related to importing and exporting in the United States. And then about 10 years ago, I left EY and founded my own practice. So it's called Fronterra Global Advisory. And let's see, what else? So I'm based here in Connecticut. I live in Stamford. I have clients all over the country. My main client is on the West Coast. So luckily, the rules related to importing and exporting in the US are national, so it doesn't matter where companies are located to try to advise them. Just trying to think. Yeah, that's a little bit about me. And feel free to ask questions. This is meant to be helpful and informative for you. Most of my work is with folks who are on like trade compliance teams at big companies. So if I'm talking too high level or get too technical, please just interrupt me and let me know. But I tried to put together some slides that I thought might be helpful for just general awareness, and I'm happy to adjust as needed. So I just thought we'd start with a little trade trivia. Anyone have a guess of the most commonly imported product in the US last year? Good guess. Any others?
I'll go with toys.
Yeah, I know.
Are you with me? All right,
Yeah.
the room is split.
There we go. Well, the answer is pretty boring. It was machinery. Nuclear reactors is actually the largest percentage, which 16%. I don't think I even like.
Nuclear reactor?
So, well, it's grouped into a big grouping of different types of machinery, but nuclear reactors is in that bucket. Yeah, coffee I didn't even see close to the top, but it's one of those interesting ones that like we don't grow any coffee in the US.
Is that by value or units that this is broken out?
I think this is by value. That's a really good question. Yeah. Yep.
Well, pharmaceutical products was in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Okay, so basic question, what is an import? It is merchandise entered into the customs territory of a country. So when a good crosses a border, it is considered imported. So just like, when you've taken an international flight, I don't think they even do this anymore, but we used to get those little forms that you fill out when you're about to land. Essentially, that's the same thing that companies do on a much larger scale. So when goods and shipments come to a port in the United States, it could be an airport, it could be a seaport, it could be via rail. When it gets to the border, a declaration needs to be made to the US government telling them exactly what is in that shipment, how much it's worth, and then based on that information, how much the company needs to pay in tariffs and customs duties. So I actually took these two photos myself earlier this year. I got to tour the Port Liberty in New York. It's right on the border of New York and New Jersey, and saw this huge cargo ship coming in to be loaded. So it was pretty cool that I took this elevator up to the top where they have those like huge cranes that take the containers on and off the ship. So it was pretty neat to see. But that's the basic idea of an import. And everything that crosses the border, basically, the government wants to know about and what's coming into the United States and any other country for that matter. Okay, and then in general, what are duties and tariffs? I think in the news, the word that's used this year is tariffs, and that's, I think President Trump's maybe, did he say it's his favorite word in the dictionary or something like that? But so in my professional world, we refer to them as customs duties, but they're the exact same thing. So I've gotten that question, what's the difference between duties and tariffs? You'll probably hear me refer to them as customs duties just because that's how I refer to them, but same thing as tariffs. And they are taxes on imports. So they're considered an indirect tax. So a direct tax would be a tax on your income. These are indirect taxes because we pay them indirectly. Companies pay these taxes to the governments, and most of them filter down to us. And most customs duties are a percentage of value. So we're hearing all these percentages in the news too. Now this country's this percent, Switzerland's 39%. So that's typically how it's calculated. It's a fairly straightforward math equation, at least. And so there's different types of duties. There's kind of the baseline duties. So like pre-Trump, there were customs duties that were applied to every single product that came into the United States. Sometimes, and for many, many products, that was 0%. But many products were subject to a higher rate. It could have been, anything ranging from 1-2% all the way up to the teens. For example, clothing has always been subject to very high duty rates in the United States, 15 to 20-something%, just baseline, pre new tariffs this year. And then we have these so many of these tariffs stack on top of each other. So we have these reciprocal global tariffs. So you might have heard, I think, in April, Liberation Day, when Trump announced that huge list of country tariffs that have subsequently been updated over the last few months. Right now, they're at a minimum of 10%, and they go up to about 40%, depending on the country. And it does seem to be still changing quite a bit. There's negotiations still ongoing with countries, so we may see some movement in that. Fentanyl tariffs were placed on Canada, Mexico, and China earlier in the year, and these range from 10 to 35%. These are then added on top of the reciprocal tariffs as well. And then there's all different types of, there's other types of tariffs these are just a couple of the main ones. You've probably heard in the news there's new tariffs on autos and auto parts and steel, aluminum, and copper. The list is going on. Now they're investigating potential tariffs on pharmaceuticals. The list seems to be ever expanding. So right now it's a pretty complex landscape of what items are subject to. Any questions? All right, so this is just a slide I had prepared earlier this year just to show the landscape. Like 2024, the average tariff rate in the US was 2.5%. So that's the average rate that we were paying on goods imported into the US. There were, in Trump's first administration, he did put additional tariffs on goods from China. Not all goods, it was certain goods, and these are referred to as China 301 tariffs based on the section of the code that it was enacted under. So that's 7.5% to 25%. But that was kind of the landscape we were looking at last year, very focused on just additional tariffs in China. Those were implemented 2018. So since 2018, a lot of companies have moved their supply chain just because of those tariffs and expanded to other countries around the world, especially in Asia. What's challenging now is a lot of companies moved out of China over the last few years, for example, to Vietnam, and now those countries also have, very high reciprocal tariffs as well. And then the right side of this chart just shows kind of a summary of all the new tariffs and just some of them that have been implemented this year. I thought this was an interesting graph from the US Treasury Department. You can see here, like pre-Trump 1, the US was collecting about like 4 billion monthly in customs duties. And then once they enacted those additional customs duties on China, you see it at least doubled after 2018. And then in this environment, I think this was as of June, the US government had collected $28 billion in just that 1 month on customs duties. So US government is bringing an incredible amount of money right now in tariffs. You may have heard, like, there's also a lot of court cases going on right now that are challenging this. It's going up to the Supreme Court, I think, in November. Very interesting to see if, like, what's going to happen and if potentially importers could get any refunds depending on the outcome. So just a basic understanding of customs duty and what it's comprised of. We look at 3 elements, specifically what is the product. In this example here, we have like a felt tip marker, and all items that are imported have a code. You might hear a tariff classification code or classification that is associated with the product itself and helps determine the customs duty. And then we look at where the product is from, the country of origin, where it's manufactured. In this case, the example is China. And then we want to know what the value is. Because the customs duties are a percentage of the value, we need to know what we're paying for this. So in this example, I say we're ordering 20,000 pens. They cost 50 cents each. So we're paying $10,000 for this shipment to the Chinese manufacturer, for example. So this just shows the difference here. For the same exact item, if it's made in Vietnam, this item has a 4% baseline tariff. Just regular, that's what felt tip markers have always been subject to. And now Vietnam has a 20% reciprocal tariff on it. So 24% of $10,000. When this shipment comes into the US importer is required to pay $2,400 in customs duties to the US government. If they ordered the same exact pen for the same amount from China, you can see here some of the stacking tariffs. Oops, this formatting. There's the baseline tariff. We have the China specific tariff. There's the reciprocal tariff and fentanyl tariff. So it ends up being 41.5% from China. So right now, everyone is trying to figure out what country makes the most sense to manufacture from based on the duties that are specific to that country. So it's a big difference here.
So are you seeing your clients taking action right now, or is there still a hesitation of we don't know what it's going to be?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of clients are starting to take action. I think for a while at the beginning part of the year in summer, people were more hesitant because there was that big delay. It was a 90-day delay. Now it seems to be a little bit more solidified. So
is any of that onshoring, or is it still...
Yeah, I mean, I haven't talked to anyone who said we're going to be able to manufacture in the US.
It's not, we don't have the skill set.
Yeah,
Well, we don't have infrastructures.
Yeah,
We don't
exactly.
have infrastructure for support.
Yeah.
We have to train those people. We have to.
Well, Louis Vuitton has a factory that they opened up years back, and they were supposed to employ 1,000 people. They only can employ 300 people because they don't have the skill set. They have 40% more waste than any other factories. We just don't have the skill set in the country.
Wow.
Yep. And moving a manufacturing line can take 6 to 18 months for, big manufacturing companies. This can't happen overnight, even if they wanted to move to a different country or potentially the US. I mean, a lot of folks I'm talking to are looking at what options are in Asia, like outside of China, potentially. Some folks to Mexico. So Mexico and Canada, basically, if you manufacture in either of those countries, that is the only place in the world where you can enter with zero tariffs into the US right now under the free trade agreement that is currently in place. It's the USMCA. So that free trade agreement is the only one that actually allows for no tariffs. So the US has a lot of free trade agreements in place with a lot of other countries, but those may get rid of the baseline tariff, for example, but all the other tariffs are still coming into play. So everyone's like, if you were already manufacturing in Mexico or thinking about moving there, folks are pretty happy about that decision right now. But obviously labor and a lot of other considerations, labor is higher in Mexico than in Asia, so it's.
So is there a tipping point? And I guess to your point, right, on the skilled labor, like, because the whole argument is that it's going to be cheaper to produce here, and like, we'll determine whether or not this is actually really what ends up happening. But there is a financial tipping point at some point. But like, do you have like that number in mind of like it would have to be 150% tariffs in order for it to be worth manufacturing and doing all the work to get things up and running in the States?
That's a good point. No, I don't. And it's probably like very product specific and company specific, but everyone's looking and doing those calculations. But so far, I haven't heard anyone saying,
And to that point, I'm not an expert in this, but all of a sudden you'll hear, Japan's willing to open this factory here and they're gonna commit $500 million. And I'm like watching that and I'm like, some people are saying, well, that's kind of a buy-off to defer the tariffs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what's that mean? So the countries are just saying, I don't want to deal with this, and we're shaking them down, and they're going to build a factory here that's.
But also think about where are they going to build it? They first have to find the ideal place to build it, have the capabilities to transport it, and then therefore that also means involving communities and communities making decisions. Do they want to have these factories there? And all those kind of things, they take a long time. Gibano has that same argument. They took them years to find a plant where they could create more of their product. I mean, they're already established in this country, but they're grown so big that they needed another factory. It took them years to find it, and then they need to build it, and then find the skilled labor.
It's funny, because Axon Technologies, which makes the taser and the body cam, so they're out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Great wealth, great jobs for the community. They asked if they could basically rebuild their headquarters there, and the local towns gave them so much guff. They're like, we're out, and they were already established as a job generating thing for the community. I was like, wow. And that's a 20-year relationship they had. They're like, okay, we won't do it.
Yeah.
So,
It's tough.
It's quagmire.
And I think big companies too are trying to figure out like, okay, if it's going to take a couple of years to build a plant, this administration, we have, 3.5 more years of it. So I think everyone's still trying to do that risk calculation too, of like, are the rules going to change in 4 more years? And then we've built this plant here that we can't sustain potentially.
But then the other side, like where my perspective is, I just got a patent on some technology, and I always loved to build American. And my first product, just because the price point won't work, but the next tier, when you get to enterprise, it can. So I want to start with this little overhead. So I reached out to Geyer 9, which is in Southbury. They're vertically integrated, so they can do the engineering, they can do the design, and then they can do final assembly. So I'm like, okay, this is great. So I have this turnkey. So for companies starting for their, they already have the skill set to do it, and they have the scalability to do it. They're forthright in saying once you get over 10,000 a month, we're out. But they have people that can do it. So I think what you're looking at it's almost like a push-pull. Like if you're just starting your business, and it can be scalable because your example, I would assume they need artisans, leather artisans for Louis Vuitton. You know,
Well,
that's
yeah,
a-
but that was just one small
Yeah.
example. We're talking, you've got a technical, something more technical that really needs a higher skill set than even that. But I'm just saying, at an elementary level, you just don't
Yeah.
find, and especially with the way this generation is, nobody wants to work. Nobody wants to learn, everyone wants to go to college. Nobody wants to actually use their hands to do labor.
Right. Well, electricians and plumbers are saying that's, in 15 years, that's gonna be a high,
Oh, they're making a ton of
Oh,
money.
Well,
yeah.
they are, but I mean, what I'm saying, like in my country, I'm from Switzerland, in my country, 80% of people go into a vocational skill.
Mm,
Think about that.
wow.
We're in this country, we finish high school, we don't go to college, we're frowned upon,
Mm,
and especially women today as well.
mm.
So the mindset is what I think is really important. All these things can be achieved if we work in towards a common goal. Even if we say after 4 years, these tariffs are gone, why not protect our properties, protect our integrity and the things that we produce and create in this country and make it American made? That's what makes America great, not all that other rhetoric. That's what makes America great.
We're drifting into the political side,
Yeah.
which is fine, but so in Switzerland, so.
Is this okay with you?
80%
Oh, yeah.
in the vocational space, like, how is the wage, also, I mean, there's obviously big differences in size of the countries, but how is the wage, income
So let's
gap
do
work out?
I'll quickly do a comparison. If you're in a job like I do, which I'm a merchandising director for Nielsen's, and I'm also a florist. My job, I would get paid 13th salary. I get paid 40 hours a week, but you have it, it's all protected, that you cannot work more than the 40 hours times 4 weeks at all. You get free time. You get to start off with 4 weeks vacation. My job, I would get paid at least a third more than I'm getting paid in this country.
Mm.
Why is that? Because they have a higher standard of living than we do in this country. Everything costs more money.
Yeah.
A florist, for example, goes to school for 4 years to become a florist.
Wow.
It's a licensed profession.
Oh, cool.
When we have people coming in and saying to us like, oh, I'm a florist, I'm looking at them, where'd you go to school?
Mm-hmm.
There's no education behind it. So that's the whole mindset I'm talking about. If we start to become tariffs and all, this is the problem we have to deal with right now. This is how we have to solve how we're gonna navigate ourselves the next 10, 20 years. But the reason we got there is because we didn't do our homework before. We let ourselves get to this. We allowed all of our technology to be developed in other countries without supporting the values that we had in this country. How many people go to college? How many people become engineers? How many people become managers? Why are they needing to do things in other countries when they can make here? So I'm getting off my soapbox.
Yeah.
It was a good box, I like it.
Yeah, no,
You
it's
spoke well.
it's all very interesting.
I wanna have more conversations with it, but.
Yeah. No, I think
Something else is gonna bring up at the end.
I think everything changed when China, early 2000s, when the WTO opened up to China and manufacturing just started
Well,
We
it's
didn't
flooding.
equal
protect ourselves.
opportunism.
We didn't protect ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We let the reins go.
Yeah,
That's the
well, we
problem.
went for the short-term gains, they were just slashing and burning.
We're all trying to fill our
And they
pockets.
artificially pegged their currency dollars in a way that made it more valuable for us to go
Absolutely.
outsource there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many dynamics, it's hard
Yeah.
to.
And
Yeah,
we-
it's
we
a
gave
very-
democracy, we said, oh, they're gonna love it, they're gonna fall.
But this
just
country's
like
not based
Russia.
on democracy. If you read historically, we're not a democracy.
Oh, understood, but either way, they were gonna fall into our system, not
Mm-hmm.
keep Mao's system, and we were wrong.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no. It's a very complex topic. So looking at hidden risks in your supply chains, and I don't know if any of you are directly involved in bringing goods in from overseas.
I'm about to, that's why I'm here, I'm worried
Yeah.
about the hidden fees.
Yeah, I mean, so one thing you want to now with all these tariffs, you really want to be scrutinizing all of your invoices. I mean, even if you are not the importer and you're buying from, a middleman distributor in the US, you want to, who knows, maybe they're just putting some block fee on the bottom, like tariffs,
That's what they're
30%, that's ridiculous.
Some do line by line, some
Yeah.
do it in one block thing, and you
Right.
just don't know.
Yeah, what is that? So I would be scrutinizing invoices and any other documents and really understanding and asking and demanding for a breakdown. Okay, what's the value of the product and how much we're paid in, tariffs and what am I, and also in contracts, like what are you agreeing to pay for? Like some companies have contracts where they're not gonna be paying for the tariffs. That's the middleman and they can't pass it on. Like, I mean, most of the time that's not gonna happen, but it depends on how everything's set up. But I think it's more important than ever to really make sure documentation is very clear.
And their shakedown fees. A friend of mine is migrating from Chinese manufacturing to Vietnamese. And, you know, they have a $50 million company. It's not huge, but big enough to where you think they have some weight.
Yeah.
They've been in business 30 years. And the Vietnamese, seeing what's going on, are putting a service fee of 15%. That has nothing to do with the tariffs. They're just
Yeah.
like, you don't like it?
But it's
Stay
still
in
cheaper.
China.
It's still cheaper.
Yeah, but it's like, it's a shakedown.
Wow, I haven't seen that yet. I mean, in
I'll
Vietnam,
give you, get you to
Oh.
talk to you about it, because he's like, I just can't
that's,
believe it.
yeah. I mean, Vietnam is a very interesting case because it's so many people and companies moved to Vietnam from China that now they've announced this transshipment additional tariff of 40%. So the tariff assigned to Vietnam is 20%, but they have said if the goods are transshipped from China, it's going to be 40%.
Can I ask a question? Does
Yeah.
that mean, for example, if they're now moving their factories to Vietnam, will those companies that were established be affected by that tax as well?
Yeah, it's just the US government has not yet clarified what they mean by transshipment and what that means. Besant has made a comment in the media that maybe if 30% or more of the value of the good has Chinese components or parts, even if it's manufactured fully in Vietnam, could be subject to what they're calling transshipment and maybe 40% customs duties. So it's,
They're bearding.
So
It's
like,
really
Yeah.
like the triangle theory that was eventually part of the way that you manufactured one part and then you brought it to another place
Yeah.
and it ended up someplace else. So they're
Right.
challenging that.
yeah, I mean, up to this year, if the item became, became a new product in Vietnam, no matter where the parts and components came from, it was a product of Vietnam. If it, you could take all the components, but you have a new finished good, it's product Vietnam. So this is completely turning it on its head, but it hasn't yet been defined. So there's still a lot of confusion about this, and no one really knows how it's going to be enforced.
'Cause I work with a lot of companies that have been selling me things directly from Vietnam that were established there. So I'm wondering that I have to be more scrupulous.
They're probably, I think there's gonna be more information coming out, but I don't know if the Vietnamese company is sourcing from China, that's probably the first question to ask.
And even before the tariff wars, the cost of living in China was going up so much that they were investing into plants in Vietnam and other Southeast Asian countries, even before this. It was
Yeah.
just evolution or whatever.
Yeah. I think a lot of lessons were learned in the pandemic too, where we were realized that we were dependent on China or one single country for certain products. So, I mean, before tariffs, I think that also caused companies to start thinking about just being able to have a more resilient supply chain and manufacture in different locations, different regions. So if one region gets shut down, the other one can pick up. So, there was diversification more, starting to happen as well over the last few years. The second point here is confirm the country of origin. Now that the customs duties are really dependent on a country, so prior to this year, it really didn't matter what country the item came from. It just had that baseline tariff. And so companies were making decisions on just where they could manufacture it, probably for the lowest value. Now you really have to take into account the individual country and what that tariff is associated with it and do those calculations as well. It might be cheaper to manufacture in a country that it might cost more to manufacture there, but the tariff might be lower. And you also want to scrutinize and confirm, is it truly country of origin China or Vietnam, or, do you have proof of that? That's something that we really need to look into in supply chains.
But how transparent do these companies have to be with us?
Well, the burden is on the US importer to determine country of origin when it's declared to the US government, but I mean, as an importer working with suppliers, suppliers should be transparent with you in terms of providing a bill of materials and all of the components and where they're manufactured. So that also can come down to like contracts and relationships with suppliers, and making sure you're comfortable with the information that you're getting. It also depends on the product. Like, does it pass the smell test that this was like fully manufactured in, India? Or do we think, they likely have a lot of electronic components from China? I don't know.
It's a mess.
Yeah. And then really like making sure your business, I mean, this kind of goes hand in hand, business partners are following rules. I've talked to a lot of smaller importers who are like using Alibaba, and, like they barely even talk to the supplier in China. There's like this third party where they provide the information online. There's no phone numbers. There's like, it's just over email. But there's so many manufacturers in China, like making recommendations that are completely fraudulent in the US. For example, when these, originally China, back earlier in the spring had 125% tariffs on goods. And, many Chinese manufacturers were saying, well, this $100 item I sent you, I'm just going to send you an invoice for $100 or $50, and then I'm going to send you a separate invoice for $50. We're going to call it for quality and testing. So you only have to declare the $50 on the imports and pay, half the duties that you owed. But but for like a one-person business who does not work in this area, that might like say, oh, well, yeah, why would I pay customs duties on quality and testing? It should just be on the product. That makes sense to me. But that is actually not allowed at all. And I've heard that from several different companies where all different types of invoicing schemes are being offered. And at least, from the foreign manufacturer side, just assuring them, no, we do this for all of our customers. This is absolutely legit, where it's actually not.
Are the large companies that are like on the stock market?
Yeah.
Because we're seeing a muted response.
Yes.
In the equity markets to
Yeah.
tariffs.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, is it because people are doing the wait and see, or because people aren't actually moving, or is this happening at that large of a scale where the tariff impact, and I know some companies are also absorbing it,
Yeah.
waiting to pass it
Yes.
down, so we're not seeing the inflation side come
Yes.
really aggressively. Like, it seems like there is this spring that's compressing, where if Trump gets the Supreme Court ruling that he wants,
Yeah.
6 to 18 months from now, that spring is gonna explode as we go down this path. Are we seeing, or are you seeing that type of kind of fraudulent stuff happening at those larger levels?
No.
So it's not, okay, so at least that's not part of the reason
No,
it's happening.
I don't think so. No. I mean, so large companies, and that's mostly who I work with, they have full teams from, a couple people up to 20 or 30 people that are trade compliance professionals handling all of these things. And so they all, for the most part, know better and won't be engaged. And they're the ones paying all these customs duties right now.
Right.
And I do think companies have not been passing it on as quickly to the consumer because there's been a lot of like wait and see, things are going up and things are going down and we don't know what's going on. I am convinced in the next couple of months to the next year, like prices are going to be.
They're inching already.
Yeah, they're already going up, you can see, and it's almost a little bit too slowly to notice. Yeah, but like everything in my Amazon cart is a few more dollars. Some is even double from when I ordered it last year, but I really think companies are, eventually they have to pass, I mean, these percentages are so high, unless their profit margin was absolutely huge, they can't keep, eating these tariffs and not passing them on to the consumers. So just, if they were used to paying, 2% and now they're paying 40-something%, that's an entire profit margin.
What's also questioning me when I'm hearing the tariffs are at that 30% and my vendor's telling me, well, we charged it 7%, now we're going to charge you 15%. You're still not at that 30%, so are you going to be around long enough that you have enough liquid cash to be able to keep your business going? I know a lot of people are leaving this country. I have a couple of my vendors, they refuse to stay here. They're closing shop.
Yeah. I mean, the cash flow is a hard thing too, because
Yeah.
companies need to pay it at the time of import within 10 days. And a lot of times in the past, like customs brokers might have been floating that money. Like customs broker might have said, okay, I'm going to pay it on your behalf. And, you know, and the next month I'm going to invoice you for all your shipments. You owe me $10,000. That's what I paid to the US government. Customs brokers can't do that anymore because it's in the millions and, you know, billions of dollars.
And so smaller importers, to your point, are being squeezed out.
Well, that's what happens. A lot of the smaller ones are being squeezed out. They're closing shops. Done.
Yeah,
But the bigger ones that have been around for years, that have really been leaders in the fields that I need them for, they're starting to pull back, and I'm wondering how healthy can they stay and how
Yeah,
long can they stay afloat?
I know.
When they're dealing with this uncertainty.
Yeah.
I have one specific one. It's a Dutch company called Kamic, and we buy all of our Christmas stuff from them. Like I spend about $25,000 with them. I'm exposing this stays in this room. And basically they said, we're closing shop in the United States. We will have a representative here. We're a closed shop. You still can buy from us. We will fly you to Holland to do the buying from us with the guarantee that you're going to spend $25,000. But we will not ship to the United States. You will have to take over those costs.
I mean, yeah.
I mean, that's one of my first questions that I wanted to bring up today, and why I really was interested in coming. They basically showed me that there was going to be a cost on my behalf that would be less, because now they're not paying for those costs. But I have to pick up the VAT, I have to pick up all the freight, and I have to find the carrier and get the timing in. Of course, that's not my business. I don't do that. I don't.
Right.
So the question is this where we're gonna be going?
That's tough. That's the first one where I've heard where they're saying, that you have to.
It's actually, it's not been publicly announced. I know this internally because I work very closely with my representative.
Yeah. But they're just like, we don't want to deal with it. I mean, it's not worth worth it to them.
This is something many of my vendors, I place an order in January at the Atlanta show, and I come back from there, go over my things, and decide what it is I'm keeping, go in stay in my budget. This particular vendor, there is no cancellation whatsoever.
Oh, wow.
So I have to buy the $25,000, that's it, done deal. Which I understand that one going into it, and the risks that come along with it. The other vendors, I may put in a $10,000, $15,000 order with them, and decide as I go along the way, I'm seeing my sales are slowing down, I'm gonna pull back a little bit. I can pull back.
Yeah.
That's my choice.
Right.
But I'm wondering if that is also gonna change. If they're gonna say, listen, we're gonna head more to this model.
It could
because
be.
it's more fiscally responsible for us.
Yeah.
And they can focus on their growing flowers and stuff.
Well, I mean, if you think about even how does a company stay healthy in this country, back in the 80s or even late 70s, you had like a 7-day return policy. That was it. You had no more time than that. We now have a lifetime almost of something being able to return, and you still get something back as long as you keep your receipt. How does a company absorb those costs?
Right.
How do we stay healthy?
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. Yeah, I really think in this environment, the small and medium-sized businesses are getting squeezed the most. I've talked to folks who are saying we have to close up shop. I can't pay my employees, or just letting go a lot of employees, and it's really quite sad. Yeah. Let me see what else I have here. I guess we've kind of talked about some of these things. You know, I think there were some promises made politically that these tariffs, the other countries pay the tariffs, and they'll, it won't affect US, and that's not true. I think global or local, big or small, everyone is affected by these tariffs, directly or indirectly. Prices are being passed on to consumers. As I was saying, I don't think it's as much right now, but for sure I do see it. I don't see a world in which they can't be at these levels. I mean,
another thing to your point, a lot of companies, when they heard this happen, just had a lot of stuff maybe shipped over, and they're running out of that surplus.
Exactly.
So that's another, it's no big deal, see?
Right. Yeah.
No, it's gonna be, I think the first quarter of 2026 is going to be a rude awakening for a lot.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I even talked to a company earlier on this year. They already had tons of stock in the US that had been manufactured in Mexico. They started marking it up 25% on their invoices just to get ahead and make more profit on, they had 9 months worth of stock in their warehouse. They marked everything up 25% because, and just said because of, Mexico tariffs, they don't even have to start importing from Mexico until January. So some companies were like almost taking advantage of this where it's, a pretty inelastic demand and they felt like they could. And, some companies have been waiting to pass on, but are probably at the breaking point right now too. It's like, we got to raise our prices. We don't know if, they could be tolerated, but, the other thing is that supply chains are slowing down because of all this complexity. Like it's much, even to make the customs declaration and make sure it's correct, and customs brokers have to make sure they have all the correct codes, and there's a lot of back and forth with the companies and importers to confirm things are going to be moving more slowly, and enforcement is starting to be way up. US Customs, their enforcement efforts are starting to become at an all-time high, so that could also slow things down.
And all these unclaimed containers are probably starting to pile up with goods that no one's picking up, right,
Yeah.
at the docks.
Right.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, if you don't pay, like you said, if you don't come and pay, well, they don't take it back.
Yeah.
Then they go to an auction, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've noticed my Amazon shipments have been.
Oh, totally.
slower.
But
Like,
yeah.
Taking a few more days versus the 1 to 2.
Yeah.
I mean, and you think about, that's also a labor thing, right?
Right.
What kind of vacuum is being created by all of the ICE arrests and shipping people out, where you're pulling people down the funnel to fill certain jobs.
Yep.
And, I mean, it's
Yep.
just like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Starts.
Affects
on
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've probably been hearing the news, the de minimis exemption. So up till now, since 2016, goods, shipments under $800 could just enter the US duty-free, didn't matter what was in them, like,
1,000 now, I thought.
no, it's gone. There's no minimum. So, yeah. So, before the DHLs, FedEx, UPS, like just thousands and tens of thousands of shipments a day under $800. That's how all these, Shein and Temu, these companies that popped up in China, that's their entire model, was sending directly from China overnight on an air shipment, a $5 bathing suit.
And undercutting all these
And not paying any-
companies that blood, sweat, and tears their products.
Yeah. So that is now gone. So, companies that did have this e-commerce set up are now really struggling and figuring out what to do.
Here's a question too, what about if you travel outside of the country and you bring something and you have to declare it, right?
Yeah, I think for personal goods, the $800 is still in effect, but if it's like thousands of dollars, yes. Yeah. And that's always been the case, but I don't think the minimum, I think for personal effects, I think that's still in place. Yeah. No Swiss watches though. Yeah. 39%. Oh my God. Just a little bit on AI. I'm not an AI expert, but I've talked to a lot of people who, need to now figure out what the tariff code, the classification code is for their item, because this $800, nothing needed to really be declared for this like $800 de minimis. And now they need to figure it out, and they're just putting it into like ChatGPT, and like, that is not correct. I have not seen good results from that. So I do caution people to not use these tools to make these types of very technical determinations.
I gotta make a call.
There are really good AI tools for like researching, for tariff classifications. The US government puts out a ton of research and guidance, and you have to go ruling by ruling to read through them. AI is great for that. It can read through all the rulings on a, whatever it is, like for your type of product, let's say, maybe yours is brand new, but.
Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah, Bluetooth speaker, you can put it into custom system.
That's right.
It might pop out like 20 different rulings where they've advised this is the tariff classification. AI can read that in a second and summarize it for you. That's a great, way to use AI. There's a lot of tools coming up in this industry that are doing things like that, and that's great. Like, this is a very document-heavy industry, even though filings are made electronically, the commercial invoices, the bills of lading, that's all still like, even though there's an electronic copy of it, it's still, using AI to read PDF documents and getting that data can be very helpful. I don't know if you've heard of something called duty drawback, but that's like if you import and you pay the tariffs and then you end up exporting that good out of the US, you're allowed to draw back and request a refund of 99% of those duties. But it's a very manual, complicated process where you have to match the import to the export. So again, a tool like AI can be well used for things like that. What else do I have in here? So my areas in my business, kind of three main areas. One is compliance, and that's probably my busiest area right now, is just really understanding all the rules and regulations. A lot of companies are very proactive in this space. On the reactive side, companies might get a letter from US Customs with a question about a shipment, or they might be under audit from Customs, so that's more the reactive side and supporting clients through those types of inquiries and audits. And then on the strategy, of course, planning, helping them look at, where could they potentially, setting up their supply chain, doing some analysis. If you bring it in from this country and this country and this country, here's what we're looking at for the differences and what maybe free trade agreements we could use, that type of thing to, minimize duties to the extent possible. I think some folks think there's nothing you can do, and that's not exactly true. There's still, it could be changing country. We could look at the tariff classification. Is that right? There's those three levers of tariff code, country of origin, and then looking at the value. Is it valued, correctly as well? And the data automation, helping companies with like data analysis, but also, maybe software selection. There's a lot of tools in this space. Let's see, I think we're okay on time, but these are pretty boring. Well, I can go through a couple recent case studies. I was working with a medical device manufacturer, and they have a huge plant in Mexico. Up until this year, they were never making use of the USMCA free trade agreement between Mexico and the US because the goods were 0% duty. So why make this claim and have extra scrutiny when there was no duties on these products? And there's no baseline duties on, pharmaceuticals and medical type devices. But all of a sudden there was a 25% tariff on Mexico because of the fentanyl tariff. So all of a sudden this company needed to review like tens of thousands of its products to see if they qualified for the USMCA agreement, so then they could be entered duty-free into the US. So it was like literally as soon as like one day's worth of analysis, they were putting it into their system, and the next shipment that was going out, it was like, C-suite level scrutiny on this one little topic that probably the C-suite had never thought of before. But all of a sudden, if the price of your goods go up 25%, that's really huge. This example is a little bit old because the 125% tariffs on China have gone away. Now they're hovering in the 30%. But when they were 125%, there was actually a way to have them only be 25%, because if the goods had steel or aluminum in them, you only had to pay the 25% on the steel aluminum, and you were not subject to the 125% reciprocal tariffs. So there's lots of now that math doesn't work, but at the time that was a huge savings. So
How many things come in this country that are made of steel other than
Yeah.
like clothing still? Would it be 125%?
No, well, the 125% was the reciprocal tariff on all goods. It was only on certain goods that had those components. This was for electronic manufacturer.
Start making chainmail shirts again.
Yeah, exactly. Even for companies like right around then, they were making toys. They were figuring out, companies were figuring out how they could add steel or aluminum into their products at this point because.
Hopefully not breakfast cereal.
Yeah. But they just announced it's ridiculous. The number, even beer now, because of the aluminum can, now is subject to this.
That makes sense though.
Kind of, but can you imagine the complexity of telling the customs broker how much value of this beer can is the aluminum can versus the beer inside of it, and making sure they only pay the 30% on,
I know a couple of lawyers who'd be pretty good. at
yeah,
doing
I
that.
mean,
So you're talking basically not about how much it costs to put it together, just the actual value.
value of the aluminum or steel or copper in the item. And if you can't, then it's considered 100%, if you can't figure that out. But one thing is figuring it out, the other thing is making sure compliance, like that your customs brokers are actually doing it correctly and that you're auditing and making sure, I mean, it's a
Like for-
total,
Yeah, like for my product, they're only, the taxation is on the value of the components in it, not the assembly. So whatever my bill of material is from the component side, that's what I'm getting tariffed on, not the finished product.
you shouldn't be
What should I be?
on the total value.
Of the product?
Yeah, yeah,
See, look, it's already got it.
yeah.
Because you're assembling it overseas.
It's gonna be overseas.
Yeah, labor is part of the value. Whatever you're paying them, you need to declare. You're paying them for the labor, right?
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's not just the components?
No. But that's often what companies overseas are telling US importers.
So there's your caveat for today, for coming today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I can walk away with one good new piece of knowledge,
Yeah.
some good banter.
Yeah,
Good, so
Makes for any good meeting.
now we're in gravy, I'm in gravy now, I can relax.
yeah. You can also strip out US content, so, you know, if an item has at least 20% US content, you don't need to pay the reciprocal tariffs on that percentage. So you might send pieces over from the US to be manufactured abroad. If it's at least 20%, you don't have to pay the tariff on that percentage. So there's lots of little things that you can do, and
Aren't these countries doing the same thing then also to us? That when we're sending stuff over,
it
they're
depends.
putting on a tax as well?
Maybe, yeah, it depends what country it is and if the item is tariffed, but they could be in a manufacturing zone where they don't even technically import the good and they just bring it into this zone that's outside of customs territory, manufacture it, and then export it out. We have that in the United States too. It's like called a foreign trade zone or a free trade zone. It's considered outside of the customs territory. So it's
So where is one of these zones?
they're located at most airports, and then there's also, you know, zones that are on their own that have been established by companies. So it's a way to, it's one of the mechanisms to save on customs duties for and encourage manufacturing. Yeah. Happy, I can give you more information on that.
That's interesting.
I know we're just about time, so I don't think the rest of my slides are that interesting, so just
Yes,
on
they are.
Oh,
yeah.
that's good.
I mean, yeah, well, I guess we made it to the end.
So what are your target clients?
So right now I'm working with mostly like Fortune 500 clients, like bigger clients, because those are the ones, you know, they're paying so much in customs duties that they need the help, and they can also, you know, afford my services. But I've been working with a couple smaller and medium-sized companies more like just this year. Yeah.
Is it just you?
Yeah. It's just me. I do partner with another boutique consulting firm, and there's about 15 of us. So honestly, most of my work is sourced through there. So, but we're all independent contractors. So a lot of my work is through there, and then I take on some client work through my company. I'm looking to possibly grow it, but it's challenging. Yeah.
Where do you see the market in the next few coming quarters?
The like financial market.
Well, and in terms of the supply demand, how are we gonna be able to see our shelves filled with things, or are we gonna have
Oh.
COVID?
I mean, I'm not an expert in that. I don't think it will be like COVID. And honestly, everything is already in the US for the rest of the year. Like all holidays and everything is probably already in the US, if not coming like this month. But I don't know about next year. I don't think it will be bare shelves. I think it will be higher prices. But maybe fewer choices, like some companies, you know, might not be able to offer as much as they had previously.
So I have a gray matter question.
Oh boy.
Well, what if you are creative and like when he first started the tariffs, the first thing I looked at are what countries weren't affected by it. You know, so you have like, I believe it was like Turkey, I think it was like Colombia, you know, these odd countries where it stayed the same because there's nothing was coming in. And my oddball thought, because I watched that movie War Dogs, I don't know if you ever saw that movie War Dogs.
No.
Like, so what if I take the product from Thailand and I take it to a tariff neutral or a tariff lower country
Yeah,
and literally just have it repackaged and have it come from that country?
yeah, no.
Well,
Yeah.
what happens? Like, I want to know the process. What do I
That's
have to
called,
avoid?
that's called transshipment. That is the old school definition of
I
transshipment.
like that word, I'm a transshipment.
Yeah, yeah. That's
What do you got?
absolutely not allowed from a customs perspective.
Oh, I understand from a customs
Yeah.
perspective, but
Yeah,
help me hack that.
I mean, that's a big
Look,
risk
you got
that
really
you
excited
have to
about
take
it. You
on.
really
No,
sparked
I
up.
just like,
Or concerned.
No,
Yeah,
concern's more like
it's-
this.
it's basic-
I know concern.
it's basically like the same thing of like not declaring income stream on your income taxes. Like,
SWAT.
could you not get caught? Like, there's a possibility. Is it not the right thing to do? Like,
I didn't
Yeah.
stop just talking
Oh, yeah.
theoretical.
oh yeah, exactly. But I'm just saying, I wouldn't recommend that.
Are any of your clients doing it?
No. No.
Did they ask you
But
about it?
no.
She's good. She's
But-
good. She didn't say.
I mean, right now though, there is a 10%. There's no countries that are
Well,
not
that's the
subject.
10%, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's-
Okay.
I didn't
The
say
10%'s the
no.
new zero. Yeah. I mean, kind of.
10%'s the new
It's
zero.
it's kind of like that. But yeah, I will stop sharing. I have some business cards here.